It appears we still have several hours until dark when me and Elliot pop back in. We are in the exact spots that we were in when we got teleported out. So, Hannah is in her own rest area? I ask.
Yeah, but she can visit here anytime she wants since we're in a party,
Elliot says and points behind me. The door we originally came here from is back. I go over to it and open it up. A menu pops up asking if I would like to go to party member Hannah's house. I close that and see a search box and our recent contacts. I will that open and it shows everyone that was in the skeleton battle with us, sans the 2 NPCs that gave us the quest. Interesting. We'll have to invite her over soon. But I want to explore a little bit right now. I tell Elliot.
Copy that. I'm ready when you are.
Actually, I want to explore a little bit on my own. I won't go far. I'll wait to investigate the explosion until we both go. I just need a little time alone. Elliot nods.
I understand that. But please, don't do any sketchy shit. We're both depending on you to stay alive.
I grin and flip him off as I turn to leave. There is no obvious trail to take, so I simply go the direction that has the least amount of trees and brush blocking my way. Our camp is on the plateau of a hill, but there are much larger mountains surrounding me. Some of the peaks are above the tree line, which, if it is anything like Colorado, that puts them above 11 or 12,000 feet. The place really is beautiful. It's the kind of place me and Linda have dreamed about moving to. I briefly wonder if that is by coincidence or if Elliot told the admins to take me to a place like this. Well, I guess it's really more that they would have built a place like this for me. Which got me to thinking, what does this place look like up close? I walk to a large Douglas fir near me. I examine the flat, needle-shaped leaves, and they look exactly the way I would expect them to back on Earth. I half expected to see little nano-robots. I push my fingernail into one of the pine needles, and there is a sweet piney odor and still no sign of little robots. I see shoots from some young trees next to it, about twice as tall as me and maybe 1.5 inches in diameter. I choose one and bend it back and forth trying to break it. I can get it to move, but not bend enough to expose the roots or break. I find a rock with a sharpish edge and begin sawing at the base of it. It makes an indent, but I don't make much progress getting through it, so I switch to chopping at it with the rock. This too gives slow progress, but I do see progress. I bend and chop it for another 30 minutes and finally get through. I place it and the rock into my inventory and begin to carry on. I decide my destination is the bottom of this hill. I can't see it because there are too many trees in the way, but it will be a good enough place to turn around at. As I walk, I think how the inventory would have been great for carrying in groceries to the 3rd-story apartment I lived in a decade ago. Then I wonder how often it would have been used for shoplifting. Probably pretty often. If people back on Earth had inventories, they would have to have a way to scan your inventory upon leaving the store or keep everything locked up. Or maybe, if we had the technology to make an inventory, we would be able to have cameras that watch every inch of a store and set an alarm if someone put a piece of merchandise into their inventory. Or maybe there would just be something that magically, technology that seems like magic, that simply prevents a piece of merchandise from being able to move through a door if it hasn't been paid for. This gets me to think about how does the inventory system actually work? If they can build anything big or small out of this planet, do they simply break the item down and recreate it when you want to access it from your inventory? Does every item have an exact code for it, so every atom is in exactly the same order when it is recreated? Sort of a DNA, except also for things that don't contain DNA? More thorough than DNA, though. A code that recreates something in its exact state as when the code is written? If that is the case, why not give us save and load options? The sound of flowing water pulls me out of my reverie. I have been walking for a while now, lost in thought, and the hill is getting a little less steep and the trees ahead open up to a river. There is a lot of water flowing, but it appears relatively calm. When I get closer and have a better view of the river, I notice a small man walking away from the river and up what appears to be a beaten trail. He has long hair, a long beard, and he's a dwarf. He's carrying what looks like a 5-gallon clay jug of water over each shoulder. I have an urge to call out to him, but I hesitate. Something seems off about the situation. I believe only party members have access to my rest area. So is he an NPC? There's no way to know if he will be a friend or foe if so. He looks back toward my direction as he's walking but doesn't slow or show any sign of seeing me. He probably felt my gaze but wasn't certain where I was at. I had intended to wash up a bit in the river, but I decide to head back to Elliot to see what he thinks of the dwarf. Going uphill on the way back is a lot more difficult and time-consuming than the way down was. Still, I notice my pace is somewhat quicker than it would have been back home. I gained a lot of elevation before I thought about being tired. I open my inventory and will it to slide to the left. As I was hoping, a new screen appears. It shows my stats. I am a level 5, no class human with 12 strength, 11 stamina, and 9 wisdom. I know what they mean, but no class human makes me chuckle. I see red berries with the texture of strawberries, but the shape of tomatoes on the way back and pluck several of them to place into my inventory. It's still hours until sunset, but I can see the smoke above the trees from the campfire that Elliot has built. When I get close enough to see the camp, the walls are now much higher and our shelter is starting to look welcoming. By this time, tomorrow we can probably start building a roof. Elliot is sitting on a fallen log, admiring the shelter he's been working on. He doesn't look at me but sounds relaxed when he asks,
Find some peace while you were out?
I did, and I also found this. I pull out the Douglas fir and rock.
Planning to upgrade your bone club?
My femurbat. Yeah. Will replace it, really. Elliot holds out his hand to see the piece of wood I retrieved. I hand it over to him.
Douglas fir. Not as strong as hickory, but still an excellent choice for a staff.
He looks at the rock I'm still holding.
You're probably going to need a better tool than that to complete this. Trade me.
He hands the staff back, and I give him the rock, which he rolls over and over in his hand before finding a bigger rock next to him that he begins to chip pieces with. I brought some berries back as well. I remove the berries from my inventory. Elliot glances up from the rocks for a brief second before getting back to work and says,
Gerbs, those are very filling and give a slight boost to health regeneration. We're quite lucky to have those close to the camp.
I, also saw a dwarf. This time he stops working, sets the rocks down and orients his body toward me. He frowns at me for a second, then says,
Like a dwarf gerb?
That is a horrible name for a food and no like a person. Except I don't think any else has access to the rest area except for Hannah, right? So I figure it must be an NPC.
NPCs don't have access either. I've heard of people having mobs like the undead or kobolds in their rest area, but you usually have to go pretty far out to find them. Where did you see him?
At the bottom of this hill, by a river. He was filling some big jugs of water.
Big jugs? Like he was bringing water back for more than just him?
I shrug. Maybe. We're both quiet for a moment, and I add some wood to the fire while he sharpens the rock. Then he continues.
We're going to have to find him and see what he is about. But we should bring Hannah with us.
Speaking of Hannah, we should go see her. Maybe she'll want to try a stramato.
A stramato?
Walking to the door, I ignore him and select Hannah's rest area from the menu, expecting to be teleported, but nothing happens. I try the door handle, and it opens inward to a sandy beach. I look over my shoulder before stepping through and see Elliot approaching.
Aurorican has entered your domain.
I expect there to be a lag or something when I look at Elliot again, but no, he's just on the other side of the door looking all normal. The sun is a lot hotter here, and I see it's a tropical island. She has a forest of her own, though it looks a lot different than mine and Elliot's. Far from the beach is a tree line, and I see she has a shelter with a thatched roof. Between us and her shelter is a grave with a wooden cross and stones piled on top of it. That must have been her guide. I wonder if her guide was teleported back here when he died.
Elliot has entered your domain.
He takes the place in almost identically to how I did, with his eyes resting on the grave. Before I have time to ask him if the guy would have been teleported, Hannah steps out of her hut and waves at us. We approach her hut, and when we're close, she says,
Aloha. Isn't it great? I've always wanted to live on a beach like this.
It's lovely. It would be $1 million hut in San Diego.
It's, San Diego, I tell him.
What? Do they not like Diego?
I take a deep breath and turn to Hannah. I hope you don't mind us stopping by. We wanted to talk to you about a couple of things.
I'm glad you're here. Come on, look inside.
She says, and disappears back into the hut. I follow her in, and there are 3 steps down. Somehow, she had the time to dig down. She dug a bench out of the sand around the 4 walls, closing in on the steps. It looks great, I say, taking a seat on one of the dirt benches. If you're hungry, we brought dinner. Elliot says they help your health regeneration. I'm not sure how good they taste, though. I hand a Stramato over to Hannah and toss one to Elliot, who is standing just inside the door. He seems to be thinking about something and snaps out of it, sitting down at the one wall bench that is unoccupied. Hannah looks the fruit over and chomps a bite out of it. Juice squirts out and she smiles.
It tastes like pomegranate.
Oh, good, good. I say. I hadn't actually tried it yet.
You got a lot done here.
Yeah? I didn't have much else to do. I'll probably build another base deeper in the island. But like I said, I've always wanted a beach house, and I couldn't give up this view yet.
I take a bite of the Stramato a bit more cautiously than Hannah did, not wanting to get juice all over her hut. It really does taste good. It's like a pomegranate without all the work of removing the seeds. Mere seconds after taking a bite, I feel my pulse quicken and wonder if that's an effect of the increased regeneration.
Have you seen anyone here, besides us?
Not since Mr. Guy died. Why? Should I have?
No, definitely not. But Aurorican here thinks he saw a dwarf by our place.
I did see a dwarf.
Way cool. Was he wearing a kilt?
I have to think for a moment. Yeah, actually he was. How'd you know?
A lucky guess. I guess? But this place is based on our fiction, and the dwarves I know from our fiction like kilts.
Fair enough, I say. Good point. We were actually wondering if you would want to come with us to find this dwarf.
Oh, yes. Not tonight, though. My guide said there would be an important bulletin tonight, and I want to be here for it.
Is that so? My good-for-nothing guide didn't mention it. I look at Elliot, and he shrugs.
Do you guys want to hang out on the beach until it arrives?
Both Elliot and I agree. It's near high tide, and since we don't have chairs, we sit in the sand. I begin work on my wooden staff with the tool Elliot improved for me. I'm able to cut it down to size, which I remember hearing once should be from the ground to your chin. Then I grind the staff down with the edge of the rock until it's smooth and about 1.5 inches in diameter from top to bottom. The sunset is beautiful setting on an ocean horizon, as we're all sitting quietly watching it. What sounds like an arrow comes out of the sky, and then a thump of bulletin is now on the sandy beach.
That sounded odd.
Congratulations on surviving your first full day in the dungeon. We know the beginning can be quite jarring, but look at you succeeding. Today was a big day, but tomorrow is a much bigger day. Once you wake up in the morning, you will be teleported to the dungeon, and you will have 8 hours to find a race key. This race key will permanently change your race to one of the following: human, which should be pretty self-explanatory, but I will tell you they are probably the worst choice for the dungeon. Pretty much every mob will hate you and you don't receive any bonuses. Dwarf, like human but small and strong. Elf, also like human but smarter, way smarter. Orc, half pig, half human. Aviaka, bird people. Yes, you can fly, but no, they do not have the same diet as a human. Good thing you asked. Troll, big, strong, smelly, and ugly as all hell. They regenerate faster, though. And lastly, Foxian. This wasn't originally planned to be a race for you to choose, but since some of them are adventuring with you guys, we thought, what the hell? Why not? They are part fox, part human. They're both fast and clever. The race change will be mostly permanent, even when you go back to Earth. Yet I still say mostly because there will be a handful of race keys scattered throughout the dungeon, which may or may not unlock additional races not mentioned here. When you choose your race, you will choose your gender and physical features as well. If you do not find a key and select a race, you will be given a random race. The keys can be found on any mob inside the dungeon. However, the stronger the mob, the more likely it will carry one. These are lore items, meaning you can only carry one at a time in your inventory. These can only be used by players. Guides are excluded. There may be other advantages or disadvantages to certain races not listed here. If you have not already discovered, this place is big, like really, really big, and is split up in different sections. You are all on level 1, but you will probably only see 25 to 50 people in your section at this time. There will be less sections in lower levels and therefore may seem more crowded. But why am I telling you this now? Because we only put in enough keys for about 80% of each section to find one. Good luck and happy hunting!
We're all quiet for a moment after it ends, with only the waves to break up the silence.
Clearly, Foxian is the right choice.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Flying would be pretty cool, but I don't like the sounds of that diet comment. Plus, I'm not sure how my wife would feel about me having feathers. She isn't even a big fan of my beard. After a moment, Hannah says,
A gender change would be kind of cool if I knew I could get my hands on a second key. I wouldn't want the change to be forever.
The three of us stay there watching the waves for a while. I start to feel I could fall asleep right here with my new friends, but decide better of it, not knowing if Hannah would like time to herself or not. So I get up and announce, it feels late. I'm heading back for some rest.
Right then, me too.
Hannah looks somewhat disappointed, and I wonder if I should ask if she wants to come with us. But before I do, she says,
Good idea. See you in the dungeon?
Before walking through the door, I look up at the stars. Getting back to our side of the door, there is a big difference in temperature. For some reason, I like the crisp feeling here better. I suppose it reminds me of home. I try to push home out of my mind. It's too much to think about. I had never been in a fight prior to being in the dungeon. Sure, me and my friends would play fight when I was younger, to the point where we would get hurt sometimes, but here, I am fighting things every day that actually want to kill me. I had seen a dead person before. I used to do chores for an old man, a few doors down from where I lived, and one day when I arrived, he was sitting on the kitchen chair, slumped over. I knew right away. You could just tell, and it didn't scare me. I went and told my mom, and she called an ambulance. Then they took him away. Some days later, his kids cleared out his house, and that was it. It all seemed so matter-of-fact. Seeing this man die today seemed so matter-of-fact as well. Strangely, but knowing it was from violence, knowing that it wouldn't have happened if these aliens had just left us alone, makes it haunt me a lot more. I sigh and look back up to the sky. I'm not sure if the stars have moved or not. They're close enough to the same that I can at least say we're on the same side of the planet as Hannah. I wonder if knowing that could ever be useful. Laying down in our roofless fort, I look at the stars again and say good night, Linda. Good night, babies. I will come back to you, I promise. I don't know if they can see me or hear me, but knowing there's a chance makes me feel better.